of the more start, instead of that now I quickly run through. Into the more start. The front man gets the pole position on top, and there you go down through all the cars, down through. Takes its time to the third man who's farthest from the start. Everybody else who is not the driver, please behind cars, not in front of them, not at the side of them, but behind them. The drivers stand opposite their cars, and at the fall of the flag, they rush across the road. Rush forward, that they leap into the car, and they start the car on the ignition, and they drive it off. I'm going to tell the drivers, please, will all drivers get on their ring, down the ring, cross the car. One of the most interesting points about this is drivers, and again, please note these rules are... The doors must be closed, and the handbrake must be on. Those are the three conditions which must be complied with. Now, we have got forever white with all our saying by his side, and the flag will be up for a massive second sound. The drivers will approach the road from their car, they're ready to go across, the flag is up, and we're ready to run down the end there. Who's in first?
Phew, busy, wasn't it? But Moss has stalled his engine, while Rogers can't even get his to start. Moss coaxes his Porsche into life as Rogers goes through, thus leaving the boy last. In the lead, Hawthorne Ferrari, closely followed by the Aston Martin team and the Jaguars of Rolt and Sanderson. The first 5 cars take a more or less identical line through the chicane, proof that there is only one correct way. Rogers spins off, narrowly missing Moss's Porsche and serious damage. He waits politely for the field to pass before rejoining the race. Gaze on a kangaroo stable Aston pulls in, having spun at St. Mary's and wrapped Flockett's Lotus across the nose. Hawthorne working quite hard on the chicane, while in front of him the unlucky Flockett trundles into the pits. Leston leading the 1.5 litre class, but well aware that the threatening Chapman is behind him. Cliff Davis running second to Mike Keane in the 2 litre class. Rogers does it again, this time at Woodcote. But picking a gap once more, carries blithely on. Hawthorne gradually widens the gap between himself and the pursuit, now led by Peter Collins, determined to hold a commanding lead before De Portago takes over. Rogers decides to inspect for possible damage, though the mechanics seem uncertain what to do about it. A complete front rebuild is started on the 1100 Lotus, a 48-hour job in any garage, while the luckier Gaze pulls away again with his Aston Martin. Coombs' Lotus has a long stop for plug changing and carburetor adjustment, while Hampshire's Lister Bristol has been and gone in 30 seconds, time enough to remove a headlamp smashed when Moss stalled at the start. Harry Schell, the Franco-American, is, for once, driving a steady race in 5th position. And still, Hawthorne does his best to leave those disciplined teams behind. But no, Parnell has disappeared, and Sanderson is on his own. Rolt has expired at West Tower. So Schell takes 4th place. Moss trying hard, now second in his class. Drama. Hawthorne pulls into the pit, worried about the well-known gearbox fragility of the Ferrari, and Aston's slash into the lead. Away again with Hawthorne still at the wheel, but 7 laps behind. and others are in trouble. Forced out with hub failure, Reg Parnell wishes he had a car to drive. Out again after a lubrication check, Keane has dropped behind Cliff Davis. Let's hope the police benefit from this demonstration of how cars should be driven. Time passes. Rogers has now retired, having turned the Tojero over, fortunately without injury to himself. The very varying lines taken by some drivers through St. Mary's are shown here, with Hawthorne clipping the grass successfully and Shell taking a wide line. And then, unhappily, disaster. Poor Mike Keane, involved in a horrible accident. But in the traditions of the sport, the race goes on. Tony Gaze with the Kangaroo Stable Aston Martin retires, the car looking very disconsolate as Gaze deserts it and walks back to the pits. Now a hive of activity, some fairly organized and some fairly chaotic. The real comic opera starts with the Ferrari pit stops, as they have only brought side jacks with them and need to stop at the pits at 45 degrees, the mechanics having to manhandle the car into position. The general effect is heightened by Hawthorne's sense of the dramatic. De Potago looks as if he was taking the whole thing in a very English and phlegmatic manner. With seconds fought for out on the circuit now lost, the Ferrari, which had once been in the lead, leaves the pit with excess fuel dripping from the tail. Leston hands over to Archie Scott Brown. The Connaught is now third in the 1500cc class behind Chapman and Buer. Moss lost 3 laps changing wheels and drivers, and von Hanstein is 10 seconds a lap slower than his co-driver. With the arrival of Harry Schell, the comic opera effect is increased and rules are broken with 5 people pushing. You're right, Harry, it is a bit of a shambles. While time is wasted at the Ferrari pit, Tony Brooks takes the leading Aston Martin through once again. So, after a lengthy stop, Jean-Luc takes away number 8 Ferrari. By now, the punishing circuit seems much quieter than at 3:30, although only 6 cars have retired. Still comfortably in the lead, Brooks' Aston Martin goes down to Levant from St. Mary's. And on a very similar line, Titterington with the Écurie Cost Jaguar holding a comfortable 3rd place. Chapman with the Lotus MG, owing to good pit work, now leads the 1500cc class. 10 minutes after taking over from Wharton, Jeanneret brought the car in to have it checked over and clearance provided for the steering lock. He's spun on the chicane. After some brutal tin bashing, Jeanneret takes the car back in the race, and still the unemployed Parnell looks miserable. 98 laps, and the Astons come in for routine stops. Peter Collins takes the car over from Tony Brooks and back into the race, 1 lap behind Titterington. The car driven by Peter Walker and Dennis Poore comes next to be refueled and have wheels quickly changed. A further 2 minutes to bind the gear lever knob which had come adrift, and 2 places further down the leaderboard. One place is soon regained when Smith, lying 4th, calls in for a routine stop. Lance Macklin waits calmly to take over the HWM. A 1500 car is now 5th in the general classification, and an excited John Bolster tells the word. Once again, Titterington brings in the Jaguar to hand back to Ninian and Sanderson, and the well-trained Ecurie Cos mechanics leap to their tasks. Patron David Murray waves Titterington onto the pit counter to avoid a breach of rules. Sanderson gives the screen a cursory wipe before taking the car away. 4 wheels and 20 gallons in 2 minutes, but not quite quick enough. Collins has gone through into the lead. A routine stop for McAlpine lets the Moss von Hanstein Porsche into 3rd place in their class. No panic though. The smaller tank and 5 stud wheels of the Porsche mean a loss of at least 3 minutes every 2 hours. Radnock looks a little bit discouraged for Jaguar. The leading 2-litre comes in for a scheduled refuel and driver change, passing the lead to Hampshire. You have been a dirty boy. Bicknell shirts certainly suffer. The arrival of Holt saves Davis a place in the order, and when he goes out, he is 2nd in his class. Still trying successfully to catch up lost time, Hawthorne, with a pit stop due anyway, takes a short cut, and Tony Crook nearly follows his example. Now the race begins to take on a new interest with the approach of night. Peter Walker still in 2nd place, behind teammate Peter Collins with number 2 Aston. John Ray prepares to bring the Ferrari he is sharing with Wharton into the pits, where Hampshire is having a lengthy pit stop, allowing Cliff Davis to return to the lead of the 2-litre class. Tapes are removed and headlamp glasses cleaned, ready for the trying drive into darkness, as Peter Scott Russell prepares to take over the Lister Bristol, which has a badly broken windscreen. Peter Walker's Aston in again. The drivers and John Wire keep well out of the way and leave the mechanics undisturbed. Dennis Poore gets in with his little cushion. And the car is away in 4th place behind the Shell Ferrari, with Tony Brook now 2nd in the sister car and Titterington's Jaguar in the lead. Hawthorne is still trying hard to make up for the vital time lost in the early stages. The Aston, now back in the lead, goes through the chicane, and Titterington with a 2nd place Jaguar chases one of the amazing little Cooper Climaxes. 8 cars have now retired. Last to go was the Sopwith Cooper Climax, and with it their hopes of the team prize. Les Leston brings in the Connaught entered by the Peterbell stable with under-bonnet trouble. Leston's mechanic set to change the plugs and rocker while he enjoys his drink in the Ascari style. Having let number 3 Aston back into 3rd place, Harry Schell gets away with number 8 Ferrari. The HRG lets off steam prior to repairs. 8:15, and the first lights are coming on. This is probably the worst time of the race for the driver, driving from light into darkness with the conditions changing very rapidly. Despite this fact, Hawthorne in his efforts has broken the lap record with a time of 1 minute, 34.8 seconds. Titterington is now in second place, but soon he is to have a disastrous stop repairing a damaged headlamp which drops into third position. Lights are coming on everywhere in the paddock, and in the caravans, friendly housewives are preparing food and drink for tired drivers. Hawthorne has now climbed back into fourth position and regained much of the ground he lost through the gearbox trouble. But the same misfortune has struck the Luca Ferrari, and they have had to retire. Moss is leading the 1.5s, and Davis has a 4-lap lead in the 2 litres, but not for long. His dynamo is packing up. Collins takes over the leading Aston Martin from Brooks, and away again without losing its position. But the Ferrari is in the pits and in trouble. Efforts by the Maranello mechanic to sort out the transmission proved fruitless, and now the only hope left of the Scuderia Ferrari is the Wharton Jeanneret number 7. More haste, less speed. The privately entered Berry Duis Jaguar is still going steadily in 5th position. And the Hawthorne de Potago Ferrari is pushed away to the dead car park. Its effort finished, and the foreign threat to Aston Martin and Jaguar is removed. But suddenly everything changes. Collins, with the leading Aston Martin, is in the pit with electrical trouble, and over 12 minutes are spent rectifying it. The trouble caused intermittent misfiring and involuntary switching off of the headlamps at high speed. Back he goes into the race, but now down in 3rd position, with the Walker Poore car in the lead and Titterington second. Then the final blow for Ferrari. Wharton has to retire with a serious oil leak, while Tony Crook's Cooper Bristol, which spun and removed Sterling Moss from the race, is in the pit to inspect for damage and retire. With Moss out, Leston takes the lead in the 1500 class, and with Holt stopped, Hampshire takes the lead in the 2-litre class. Slowly, the minute and hour hands climb towards midnight and the end of the race. Every lap, signals go out to the 2 leading cars, and Titterington does his best. The Walker Poore Aston is running without any second gear and using only 3rd and top, but manages to maintain speed. The Titterington Sanderson Jaguar is only 1 minute 40 seconds behind the leader and gaining 8 seconds a lap. But now there is only 10 minutes to go, and victory, if it can ever be so in motor racing, is almost certain for the Aston Martin. The checkered flag goes out at 12 o'clock exactly, and the winner finishes. A worthy victor of the 9-hour race of Goodwood. First, Aston Martin, Walker and Poore. Second, Jaguar, Titterington and Sanderson. Third, Aston Martin, Collins and Brooks. Peter Walker and Dennis Poore receive all the usual tributes to the victor in company with David Brown, that enthusiastic backer of motor racing and better motor cars. While Dennis Poore keeps talking, Peter Walker keeps drinking.